Hello, friends that are part of the Sausalito City Parks and Rec. I'm Trishna Horvath, and I offer yoga classes here twice a week these days, pre-coronavirus, and it will be on Zoom now at this time for the coming weeks. So welcome to maybe share a little bit of practice with me and get a little bit of a feeling as to if this is a class you'd like to join, and I hope you do. So I'm going to start with having us just take various options for sitting. So we'll start with the sitting practice. So one option that works great for folks if their bodies are rather tight is to get a chair, sit on the edge of it, arrange it so the feet are under the knees, the hands rest on the knees. And mainly that we're not, unless we really need to, we're not kind of slumping back into the chair back, but rather holding ourselves upright. So this is a great option, and much of what I offer in the seated pose on the floor could be done right here. In fact, I would safely say everything. So this is a great option. You're welcome to take it. Alternately, sitting on the floor, whether it be in a kind of sitting on your calves type of position with a nice upright posture, great. Or I like to put a little folded blanket under my seat for this one. Arranging yourself in a cross-legged pose. And that could be something very just kind of loose and comfortable. The main point of any of these possibilities is that your upright posture is well supported. So let's take a moment, find your seated pose. And we'll maybe sit for about a minute, just exploring the breath. So when you find a position that's comfortable for you to hold, and with a nice sense of upright posture, rest your hands on your lap. Go ahead and soften the muscles of your face. Let your jaw relax. Let your eyelids rest heavily over your eyes. And give a really nice quality of attention to the experience of the breath. Just noticing that. With each exhale, you might let yourself relax, kind of drop the shoulders, root the sitting bones. Connecting your attention to your breath. This is kind of essential in the practice of yoga, as we are basically spending our time letting the breath, the mind, and the body work together through these various practices. So in this place, let's continue to follow the breath, just with a simple circle of the neck and head, with the eyes open in this case. So inhale, and as you exhale, let your head come forward. As you inhale, circle the crown of your head to the right and all the way back. As you exhale, continue to the left and all the way forward. And we'll go the other direction for that. Inhale the crown to the left and back. And exhale to the right and forward. And we'll inhale, just coming upright, and then of course continue to breathe. So I have just a few minutes to example a little bit of how the class feels. So I guess the main thing I want to convey is that I really aspire to offer a practice where whoever attends will find a good feeling of yoga, the good feeling of that unification of mind, breath, and body. So I try to give practices with gradations of challenge. So a pose that might feel great to hold for some people for 10 breaths, for instance. For others, it might be really straining and they need to take a break and then come back in, or do something else altogether. So my sort of key words are adjust, modify, and refrain, as much as you need to or want to when you practice yoga. I think really with anybody, but especially with me. Okay, so I'm going to have us take a pose that is often called downward dog. I use a different terminology base. I term it to be equal mountain pose. But in any case, I'm going to sit sideways so that I am visible from that angle. Let's take the hands under the shoulders, knees under the hips, tuck the toes, and then rounding the spine upward, elevate the knees out of the floor, and then at some point lengthen the limbs. So here in this triangular mountain or equal mountain pose or downward dog, first of all, arrange it so your hands are about shoulders distance apart, feet are about hips distance apart, and everything's quite parallel here. I like to kind of keep the image of the ears floating between the arms here, and the sense of equal distribution of activity and equal distribution of opening kind of throughout the body. And I think we might hold this another 8 breaths or so. And if that feels good for you to do, then just keep working with that sense of lengthening evenly, strengthening evenly. And if this feels like it's a bit much for you, you could always take a few of those breaths, carefully lowering your knees to the floor, maybe sending your hips over your heels, taking pressure off the wrists. Or you may enjoy being in the pose and maybe bending the knees a little bit, especially if the backs of your legs are tight, and then you would get to keep the knees bent and focus on lengthening the upper body. Or alternately, let your back round a little and pedal your feet to stretch, the backs of the legs one at a time. We'll take just a few more breaths here. Equal mountain, upper body and lower body, kind of aspiring towards an equal feeling of stretch and openness. Washing deep breaths through the space of your body. Even imagining that you could breathe into the backs of your legs. When you're ready to come out of it, and go ahead and lift your heels, lower your knees, untuck the toes, and take a little rest in child's pose. Sometimes with child's pose, we have our sitting bones as far back towards the heels as possible. And we want to release the head, but maybe it doesn't reach the floor all the way. If that's the case for you, please take your fisted hands, possibly one on top of the other, and create a little resting place for the weight of your head. If it turns out that your head reaches down more easily, you're welcome to do that as well. Just a few breaths here. And from here, I'm going to have us climb up and actually work with a squat. So I think we'll do this squat and maybe a twist, and then we'll call it a class, a little brief class. So when we work with a squat, sometimes it's possible, we'll have sort of a wide turnout here, hands in prayer. Sometimes it's possible to just kind of sink right down into it, and take the elbows between the knees. But often, folks realize that their heels kind of come up off the ground and they don't feel stable. And if that's the case for you, when you approach a squat, placing a little height underneath your heels could really help. And come on down into it. And occasionally, squatting is just not the thing. And if that's the case for you, take a block or a folded blanket and just sit on it and have a nice turned out pose. And you can do a lot of what we're going to be doing from there. So finding your version. Breathing. You might think of lengthening your spine as you inhale, and kind of rooting as you exhale. So from this squat, we'll take a couple breaths, and then take a nice kind of lengthening side stretch and twist. Let's take the right hand. Well, there's a couple of options. You could keep your right elbow where it is and just kind of leave it relaxed, and just do a little left hand on left knee, look over the left shoulder. It's a nice gentle option. Alternately, you could take the right hand, root it into the floor, lengthen through the right arm, and then send your left arm in the opposite direction, just looking up. We're just going to take a couple of breaths here. There's a little bit of a spinal twist, a nice side stretch. The space between the left hip and the ribs is kind of opened. And when you feel complete with that, you come back to that center squat. In your practice, you might take a few breaths here. You might realize you need a break, in which case you could just lift your hips and hang with bent knees. And then come back for the other side. So again, you could keep it kind of loose, right hand on the right knee, and just kind of a gentle spiral up to the right. Or with the left hand rooting into the floor, right arm reaching away, a little bit more dynamic activity through the upper body. There's a nice stretch on the right side of the waist. And breathe into that. And when you're ready, coming back to that first position. And find your breath here. And I think for the purposes of getting to know each other, I'm going to let the class be finished there. Thank you so much for getting to know me a little bit, and I hope to meet you either online or hopefully soon right here in class. All right. Thank you.